Hello everyone. In this session I am going to explain about the concept called spring scopes. Before going into these spring scopes, we need to understand what the spring is and why the spring is required for developing these web applications. Basically there exists a lot of frameworks to develop web applications. But the thing is, we need to have some sort of easiness in developing these applications. So mostly people prefer Spring framework because of its features. These features include it has a inbuilt JDBC support, it has MVC support even, and so on. Here MVC is nothing but model view controller, which I will explain in my later videos. Model view controller. Here model is nothing but DB part. View is nothing but front end part, and controller is something where we write business logics or business classes. So this Spring has this MVC support. Moreover, it is easy, flexible in developing the web applications. Besides these things, there were two more features why mostly we use the Spring. These are injection, and second thing is inversion of controller, IOC container. This injection is nothing but dependency injection actually. See, here we inject objects. Here we inject the values resolving dependencies. Here the main aim of this IOC container is to create the objects. Basically, previously we used to create, consider this as a class A and this is a class, and in my main method whenever if I want to create this object, I have to use a small a, that is reference, new caps A. Here we are using the new operator for creating object. See, this is the basic procedure that we follow creating this object. But the thing is that this IOC container, I mean to say Spring container, this IOC container is inverting the control. From new operator creating objects to Spring container. that is IOC container. See, we are entirely shifting the pattern of creating these objects. Previously, we used to create with the help of this IOC, with the help of this new, and now we are creating with the help of this IOC container. Because of these two things, the Spring is very popular and famous. Coming to this thing, Spring scope. Scope is nothing but limitation. Limitation. Here limitation refers to the certain quantity that has to be limited in producing or limited to accessing. Here this IOC container creates the objects. Limiting this creation of objects according to sub rules is nothing but scope or Spring scopes. Here we do have some scopes. Suppose imagine I have one simple bean class and I have been having one ID, that is say name, and I have class equal to com dot example dot test class. This class name should be of a fully qualified name. I mean, it is a fully we have to mention with the packages, and we give some certain ID called name or test name. We can keep it as test name. See, we now have one class, and we have a class called test name, and we have that particular class test name we have particular ID for that is name. So the basic is I have or let's say okay, test name, I create one reference text equal to application context dot get bean of what we need to pass is that ID, sorry, name. See, whenever whenever we use this application context, we use getBean method. This getBean method, inside that we are passing the ID so that it will refer the XML file. This will be in the XML file, and this will be in the driver class. Basically, driver class is nothing but a start of application of the main method. It is similar to main method. You might get the one doubt is here we nowhere mentioned its scope. If we don't mention any scope, by default it assumes as a singleton scopes. Single object per IOC container. Suppose even I can mention scope equal to singleton, even then the same thing. Suppose if I mention prototype. Then many objects per IOC. The thing is, we need to change in the scope as prototype, and by using this thing, suppose here I am using the getBean of name, and suppose there will be another context where we will be using another type. See, each time we call this getBean method, each time one separate object will be created for that. So coming to this singleton, suppose if I call this getBean method with the help of the name once, only one object would be created, and that same object would be utilized. If I again call that getBean method in singleton, again same object will be returned. If you call n number of times, even n number of times also, that same object will be retrieved. But coming to this prototype, each time a getBean method is called, each time a separate object is created. We have request. So this is here the object is created per HTTP request in the IOC container. Suppose I have one simple login page here. From that login page, I used to register as a user, or click as authenticate myself as a valid user. So each thing is nothing but an HTTP request, whether it might be GET or POST. For each HTTP request, we used to create the object, and we need to change here it as a request. That's it. And session is also similar thing, but we do create the object per HTTP session. We might be noting here this thing, HTTP is a stateless protocol, but we indeed maintain its state. Since it is stateless, we indeed maintain its state by maintaining a session, so that it will be valid for throughout a session. Suppose I have a simple login page, and I suppose I need to have these details stored per session till I close the browser. So we create a particular session for that. That particular session, an object is created. Global session. It is also created per global session. Object is created per global session. The thing is that it is mostly used in the portlets. Portlet. This is a Spring feature where we use this global session. This session will be valid throughout this as a IOC container throughout the entire session, globally across all the across all the frameworks, I mean to say, in a single web application. So these were basically these 5 Spring scopes we do have. Most of the times we use this first 2. Mostly we use singleton and prototype, and remaining these things are not that much of importance, but we do use at certain times. So this is a basic example of this thing, Spring scopes, and this is the end of my session.